everyone. Before we get started the topic at hand, I have some housekeeping things to take care of. First of all, I want to give a big thank you to Transsynergy at YouTube for providing an excellent new look to the show as well as that awesome introduction. The man knows his video effects. Have a look at his work sometime. Next, I need to address a relatively minor issue. I was recently accused of stealing ideas and materials from another YouTube guy named Muragaru553 who has a web show called Gaijin Gamer. Let me assure you that he and I focus on two very different things. I tried to look at gaming culture between the US and Japan in a macro setting, where he reports interesting developments in Japanese gaming, traveling to some gamer interest locales, and having a handful of top 10s. I recently was able to speak with him on this matter, and he has no problems with what I'm doing. I like Muragaru, and I like what he does, and if you're interested in seeing some of the coolest game enthusiast locations in Japan, or the newest products, give him a look at his show Gaijin Gaming and Gaijin Gaming Gaiden. Really good stuff. Okay, so we covered quite a bit on how not enough cultural localization can hurt a narrative-driven game. But how about over-localization on a simplistic game? Well, I feel the need to redefine the objective of the second half of this topic. Before, I was going to argue about how over-localization will always hurt a game, but that really is just in the eyes of the beholder. Instead, what I want to discuss here is whether or not an over-localized simplistic game could have become something better if they weren't so heavily localized. I want to do this because after speaking with some of my peers and colleagues, I realized that this is not a matter if the game is good overall, but rather, could it have been something greater if it wasn't so localized for the majority market? The two games I want to compare and contrast for this subject is the newly released Rhythm Heaven Fever and the legacy that is Katamari Damacy. Now I think anyone who calls themselves a gamer knows what Katamari Damacy is. Ever since its release on the PS2, it has become a Sony gem over the years. Whether it's the simple yet innovative gameplay, the rockin' soundtrack, or a general feeling of satisfaction when you rode one of those annoying schoolgirls, Katamari Damacy was amazing. And before anyone tells me I'm mispronouncing the title, there is no C sound in Japanese. That was just laziness on part of the localizers. Again, big shocker. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that I think we can all agree that Katamari Damacy was a great game. But what is it about that game that made it so special? Honestly, I think it's because the franchise has stayed very close to its Japanese roots. With the exception of text boxes and instructions, very little was changed from the Japanese original. Even the music was left in Japanese, which I think gives the game a large part of its charm. So let's move on to Nintendo's recent release, Rhythm Heaven Fever. A game that is very similar to Katamari Damacy in its simplistic controls and gameplay. The rockin' soundtrack is also a great reason to pick up the game. Personally, I have a lot of experience with this franchise in Japan's numerous arcades. One of the things that drew me to it was how simple yet fun the game was. Sure, the instructions were hard to read sometimes back when I didn't know much Japanese, but it was still easy enough to play through with just the visual cues. Much like Katamari Damacy, Rhythm Heaven is also absolutely chock full of Japan's popular culture. Music, the art stylings, and even the game concepts are very unique to their Japanese-ness. I also want to bring up that months and months before this game released in the US, there were dozens of parodies and memes based off the minigames within Rhythm Heaven Fever. Here's a few examples. So I'm sure you're asking me at this point, what's your beef with this game? My problem with this game is that it feels far too diluted in localization to have the same charm as the original game did. I understand this is a matter of speculation, but I cannot help but wonder, what would Rhythm Heaven Fever be like if the same lack of attention was applied to it like Katamari Damacy? The first glaring thing I noticed was that even the verbal cues that were in English in the Japanese version were redubbed into English again. This time, it's coming from native speakers.
One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2, and yeah, yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and yeah, yeah. Yep, 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 yep. Go, go, go! Yep, 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 yep. Go, go, go! Yep, 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 yep.
I can't help but feel that this was kind of a waste of time and money, especially considering the game took 7 months to bring to the US. With as simple as a game as Rhythm Heaven is, you'd think it wouldn't have taken so long. But really, the verbal cues didn't have to be translated or even re-Englishized. All the player needed to know was what sound or word, English or Japanese, to know when to hit their button. I really can't help but feel this game really lost its charm in the localization process. Looking back on all the memes that were created and parodied in this game, I also can't help but feel I'm not the only one. I mean, let's compare the most popular minigame, Wrestler Interview, back to back in English and Japanese.
Whoa, you go, big guy. That's true.
The last big beef I have with this game may seem minor, but could have huge consequences. In Remix 3 of Rhythm Heaven Fever, the composer and name of the featured song is displayed. So, it's called Tonight and was created by Tsunku. Okay, that's cool, but check this out. In the Japanese version, the name Mana Ogawa appears and the title is called I Feel Fine. Seems like a small error, right? Well, at this point, I could only wonder if this was a simple localization error or a copyright issue. Luckily, it was the earlier rather than the latter. Apparently, Tsunku and his studio are collaborators with Rhythm Heaven Games and have been for some time. Knowing this, I'm wondering then if Mana Ogawa was only someone who simply sung the song in the Japanese version. If such is the case, that's understandable. What I don't understand is why the title of the song was completely changed. From what I can tell, it's the same song with roughly the same lyrics, and I just can't figure out why. Some of you may be wondering why that even matters. As many of you may or may not remember, I talked at length in episode 2 about how exposure to even the simplest of games can stir an interest in more in-depth details. That being said, and much like what happened with Katamari Damacy and its music, what if people liked the music of Rhythm Heaven Fever so much that they wanted to know more about the song's creator and their work? Without quite a bit of research, how would anyone be able to find the original songwriter? A small issue, yes, but it's a pretty big roadblock for anyone wanting to understand this game for more than just simply what it was presented to be. There's more I could say about this issue, but I think I'm running out of time. The last thing I want to say is I hope you guys don't think that I find Rhythm Heaven Fever for the US to be a bad game. It isn't. For the modest price of $30, there's a lot of fun to be had. This isn't a bad game. This is a safe game. This is Nintendo saying, we have a really popular title that we can possibly sell to our American customers, but there's so much of our culture in this game that the majority of the US demographic may be turned off by, so let's change everything to make it as generally appealing to the US audience as we can. From that business standpoint, I understand, I really do, but I submit to you a very humble question to you, my viewers, and Nintendo. What could Rhythm Heaven have been if the Japanese uniqueness of it was retained? What could this game have been? Thanks for watching, everyone. This is Gaijin Gamer signing out.